In the bank, no one understood the German millionairess until the black employee translated. Brigitte Schmidt burst through the bank's glass doors like a hurricane, her perfectly styled blonde hair now disheveled, clutching a leather briefcase that looked like it had been through a storm. Tears streamed down her face as desperate German words spilled from her lips, echoing through the quiet lobby of the branch. It was when she started shouting that she needed help, that she needed to transfer money, that time was running out. But no one understood a word she was saying. The employees exchanged confused glances, some whispering among themselves, others pretending to be busy with paperwork to avoid the awkward situation. Brigitte frantically pointed to the crumpled documents in her hands, trying to explain something that seemed urgent, but her German words only created more confusion. Destiny. Johnson watched everything from the corner of the lobby, where she was finishing up the last details of her morning cleaning. Her hands froze on the cloth she held when she heard the first German words. Something stirred inside her, a familiarity she couldn't explain. "Guten Morgen, wie kann ich Ihnen helfen?" Destiny said, stepping forward timidly. Brigitte turned so quickly she nearly stumbled. Her blue eyes locked onto Destiny's, and for a moment, the despair on her face gave way to pure relief. "Sie sprechen Deutsch," Brigitte exclaimed, her hands trembling as she clutched the briefcase. "Ich brauche dringend Hilfe." The other employees stopped what they were doing. Richard, the branch manager, approached with a frown. "Destiny, you're not supposed to be assisting customers. Get back to your work," he said, adjusting his tie. "She's saying she needs urgent help, Mr. Richard," Destiny replied, keeping her tone respectful. "It seems important." Brigitte sensed the tension and gently grasped Destiny's arm. "Bitte, ich brauche diese Frau. Sie ist die Einzige, die mir helfen kann," she said, looking straight at Richard, even though she knew he didn't understand. "What is she saying?" Richard asked, clearly annoyed. "She said she needs me, that I'm the only one who can help her," Destiny translated, feeling something strange in her chest. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Richard sighed, glancing at his watch. "Fine, but make it quick. And you," he said, pointing at Brigitte. "This better be really important." Brigitte opened the briefcase with shaky hands and pulled out several documents. Some were folded, others looked like they'd been dampened by tears. "Meine Mutter. Sie stirbt," Brigitte began, her voice breaking. "Ich muss das Erbe transferieren, sonst verliere ich alles." Destiny felt the air leave her lungs. Even as she translated, the words felt too heavy. "She said her mother is very ill. She needs to transfer an inheritance, or she'll lose everything." "What kind of inheritance?" Richard asked, suddenly interested. Brigitte showed a document with multiple zeros. Destiny had to blink twice to make sure she was seeing correctly. 2 Millionen Euro, Brigitte said. "Ich muss bis Sonnenuntergang die Hälfte an eine amerikanische Institution spenden." $2 million. Destiny translated, her voice barely a whisper. "She needs to donate half to an American institution before sunset." The bank fell completely silent. Even the customers in line turned to stare. Richard's demeanor changed entirely. He straightened his tie again and forced a smile. "Well, that changes everything. Let's move to a private room where we can discuss this properly," he said, extending a hand to Brigitte. But Brigitte shook her head and held Destiny's arm more firmly. "Nein, nur sie. Ich vertraue nur ihr," she said, staring intently at Destiny. "What did she just say?" asked Richard, noticing he hadn't been included in the conversation. "She said she only wants me to help her, that she only trusts me." Richard forced a nervous laugh. "Destiny, you're in cleaning. You can't handle a banking operation of this magnitude. I'm the manager." "Dann möchte ich mit dem Direktor sprechen," Brigitte interrupted, her voice steady despite the tears. "She wants to speak with the director," translated Destiny, feeling a wave of nervousness. "That's not necessary," Richard said quickly. "We can sort this out right here." Brigitte noticed Richard's reluctance and looked directly at Destiny. "Können Sie ihm sagen, dass ich meine Millionen von dieser Bank abziehen werde, wenn nicht kooperiert?" Destiny hesitated for a moment but then translated faithfully. She said she'll withdraw all her millions from this bank if you don't cooperate. The color drained from Richard's face. Brigitte Schmidt wasn't just a wealthy client. She was one of the agency's biggest investors. Of course. Destiny can help with translation naturally, he said, forcing another smile. Let's all go to my office. As they walked, Destiny noticed how Brigitte clutched the documents to her chest as if they were the most precious things in the world. There was something more in those papers than just money. In the manager's office, Brigitte spread the documents across the table. There were certificates, letters, old photographs, and legal documents in German. Meine Mutter hat mir eine Bedingung gestellt. Brigitte began, pointing to a handwritten letter. Ich muss beweisen, dass ich würdig bin. Her mother set a condition, translated Destiny, trying to decipher the German handwriting. She has to prove she's worthy of the inheritance. Richard leaned forward, intrigued. What kind of proof? Brigitte picked up another document and pointed to a specific line. Ich muss die Hälfte des Geldes an das Waisenhaus spenden, wo... Her voice faltered for a moment. Wo meine Tochter aufgewachsen ist. Destiny felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. The words echoed in her mind several times before she could translate them. She has to donate half the money to the orphanage where her daughter grew up. She has a daughter? Asked Richard. Brigitte nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. Ich habe sie vor 30 Jahren zur Adoption freigegeben. Es war der größte Fehler meines Lebens. She gave her daughter up for adoption 30 years ago. It was the biggest mistake of her life. Translated Destiny, her own voice trembling. Brigitte continued, the words coming between sobs. Mein Mann war Amerikaner. Meine Familie wollte nicht, dass ich ihn heirate. Als starb, haben sie mich gezwungen, das Kind wegzugeben. Destiny had to steady herself on the chair. The words felt like they were coming from a dream, or maybe a nightmare. Her husband was American. Her family didn't want her to marry him. When he died, they forced her to give up the child. How old was the child? Richard asked, taking notes. 3 Monate, Brigitte answered. Sie war 3 Monate alt. 3 months, translated Destiny, feeling her hands begin to shake. Brigitte picked up an old yellowed photograph. It showed a black man smiling, wearing a security uniform. Das ist mein Mann, Derek Johnson. Arbeitete in dieser Bank vor 30 Jahren. This is her husband, Derek Johnson. He worked at this bank 30 years ago, said Destiny, her voice barely audible. Richard looked at the photograph, then at Destiny. Johnson? Isn't that your last name, Destiny? Before Destiny could answer, Brigitte continued. A war ein guter man. He always said he hoped our daughter would return here one day. He sent money to the orphanage, even after our separation. The words tangled in Destiny's mind. The world seemed to be spinning too fast. She said he was a good man, that he always hoped their daughter would come back someday, that he sent money to the orphanage even after they separated. Which orphanage was the child raised in? Richard asked. Brigitte pointed to another document. Hope House in Brooklyn. Destiny let the papers fall from her hands. Hope House. Brooklyn, where she had grown up, where she had spent the first 18 years of her life wondering who her parents were. Destiny, Richard called. Are you okay? Brigitte noticed Destiny's reaction and looked at her more carefully. Ist alles in Ordnung? She asked in German. Destiny raised her eyes to meet Brigitte's. Blue, just like she had always imagined her mother's eyes would be. When did you give your daughter up for adoption? Destiny asked in English, forgetting to translate. Brigitte tilted her head, confused. Sie sprechen Englisch mit mir. Warum? When? Destiny insisted. What was the exact date? Richard looked back and forth between them, lost. What's going on here? Brigitte picked up a birth certificate from the papers. 15. März 1994, she said slowly. Destiny felt the world stop. March 15th, 1994. The date written on her own birth certificate. The date she had memorized, hoping one day to find clues about her past. Wie hieß Ihr Mann? Destiny asked in German, surprising herself. Derek Anthony Johnson, Brigitte answered automatically. then paused. Warum fragen Sie das? Destiny slowly stood and pulled her wallet from her uniform pocket. With trembling hands, she unfolded a yellowed birth certificate. Father's name, Derek Anthony Johnson. Date of birth, March 15, 1994. Place, New York City, NY, she read aloud. Brigitte looked at the document, then at Destiny, then back at the document. Das kann nicht sein, she whispered. My name is Destiny Johnson, Destiny said, tears beginning to stream down her face. I grew up at Hope House. I always wondered why someone visited the orphanage every month and left money without giving a name. Brigitte stood so quickly she knocked over her chair. Destiny, she said, testing the name in her own language. Destiny. Meine Tochter. Your daughter, Destiny confirmed, nodding. For a moment, neither of them moved. 30 years of separation, of unanswered questions, of nights spent crying over a void that could never be filled. All of it seemed suspended in that moment. Then Brigitte took a step forward, then another until she stood before Destiny. Meine kleine Destiny, she said, raising a trembling hand to touch her daughter's face. Mama, Destiny whispered in German, a word she had never spoken before, but that came naturally now. They embraced in the middle of the manager's office, 30 years of longing spilling over in tears and sobs. Richard stayed silent, realizing he was witnessing something far greater than a simple bank transaction. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. When they finally pulled apart, Brigitte cupped Destiny's face in her hands. Ich habe jeden Tag an dich gedacht, she said, every single day. I thought about you too, Destiny replied, and about my father. Tell me about him. Brigitte smiled through her tears. He was the kindest person I ever knew. He worked as a security guard here at the bank. He was the one who protected me during a robbery in 1993. We fell in love instantly. How exactly did you two meet? Asked Destiny, thirsty for any detail about the father she had never known. I had come to the United States on business. My family had investments here. During the robbery, all the security guards ran, but Derek stayed to protect the clients. He shielded me with his own body when the robbers fired into the air. Richard, who had remained quiet, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Sorry to interrupt this moment, but we still have the inheritance matter to settle. The deadline... What time is it? Asked Brigitte, suddenly remembering the urgency. Richard checked his watch. It's 2:30 in the afternoon. The bank closes at 5. No, said Brigitte, shaking her head. The deadline isn't the bank closing. It's sunset. And today the sun sets at 6:15. That gives us less than 4 hours, calculated Destiny. Brigitte nodded. My mother was very specific. The transfer must be completed before the sun sets or I lose everything. And why this specific condition about donating to the orphanage? Asked Richard. Brigitte looked at Destiny before answering. Because she always knew I had given up a child for adoption. It was her way of making me face my greatest regret. Is your mother still alive? Asked Destiny. Yes, but she's very ill. The doctor said she only has a few weeks left, this inheritance. It's her way of giving me one last chance to make peace with my past. Then let's do it, said Destiny with determination. Let's complete the transfer. Richard perked up, finally seeing a solution to the situation. Perfect. I'll start preparing the documents for the transfer. But when Richard tried to access the bank system, the screen went blank. That's odd, he murmured, typing his password again. The screen flickered a few times and displayed an error message. The system must be down temporarily, he said, trying to sound confident. Brigitte and Destiny exchanged worried glances. How long does this usually last? Asked Brigitte. Normally just a few minutes, replied Richard, but his voice lacked confidence. 15 minutes passed. The system was still down. Richard began to sweat, calling tech support and getting only automated responses. Maybe we should go to another bank, he suggested nervously. No, said Brigitte firmly. It has to be this bank. Why? Asked Richard. Brigitte looked around the room, her eyes settling on the windows overlooking the main lobby. Because this is where it all began. This is where I met Derek. This is where my life changed completely. She stood and walked to the window. Right there, she said, pointing to an area near the ATMs, was where he protected me during the robbery. Where we looked at each other for the first time and knew it was forever. Destiny joined her mother at the window. Did he keep working here after you met? For 2 years, until we got engaged. My family threatened to disown me if I married him. I chose love. And did you regret it? Never, said Brigitte without hesitation. The 2 years we had together were the happiest of my life. Even after my family cut me off, even when we were poor, we were happy. What happened to him? Asked Destiny softly. Brigitte closed her eyes for a moment. A work accident. He had gotten a better job at a security company, was working double shifts so we could buy a house before you were born. Tears welled in Brigitte's eyes again. He was so excited to be a father, had already picked out names, planned how he'd teach you to ride a bike, how he'd protect you from everything. How did you handle all that alone? Asked Destiny. I didn't handle it well, admitted Brigitte. After he left, I fell into a deep depression. My family reappeared in my life, but only to pressure me into returning to Germany. And you went back? Yes, and they convinced me I couldn't raise a child alone. No money, no support. They said it would be better for you. Destiny held her mother's hand. They were wrong. I know that now. I always knew, really. But I was so lost, so broken. Richard cleared his throat behind them. Ladies, I've reached technical support. They say the issue might take a few hours to resolve. Brigitte turned quickly. A few hours? We don't have a few hours. Maybe we can go to the main branch, Richard suggested. They have a different system. How long would it take to get there? Destiny asked. With New York City traffic at this hour. At least an hour and a half. Brigitte checked the clock again. 3:15. That would leave us with very little time, she said. Just then, Karen, one of the bank employees, knocked on the door. Richard, can I speak with you for a moment? Richard stepped out, leaving Brigitte and Destiny alone. Can I ask you something? Destiny said hesitantly. Anything. Why did you learn German so well? You work in cleaning, but you speak like you studied. Destiny sighed. Because I did. I graduated with a degree in languages. I speak German, English, French, and Spanish. Then why do I work in cleaning? Destiny gave a bitter smile. Because I sent resumes to every company in the city. Because I did every possible interview. Because I have all the necessary degrees and certifications. And I always hear the same thing. We don't have openings right now. We'll keep your resume on file. We'll be in touch. Translation, you're not what we're looking for. Brigitte felt anger rising in her chest. Discrimination. They don't say it outright, of course, but a black woman, a single mother who grew up in an orphanage, let's just say I don't inspire confidence in many employers. You have a daughter? Brigitte asked, her eyes lighting up. Destiny smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Zoe, 5 years old. She's in the daycare here at the bank now. My granddaughter, Brigitte said, tears welling up again, but now from joy. I have a granddaughter. She knows a few words in German, Destiny said. I always tried teaching her other languages, even if I didn't know if it'd be useful. What do you mean, a few words? Well, I always knew my father was American and my mother was foreign. The orphanage told me that. So I tried guessing the language. I tried English, French, German, and you guessed right with German? Actually, Destiny said, blushing slightly, it was Zoe who decided. When she was 3, she said she liked how German sounded. Said it was the language of princesses. Brigitte laughed through her tears. She's right. German really is the language of princesses. Richard returned to the room with a grim expression. I have bad news. Karen told me some employees are questioning the legitimacy of this situation. What do you mean? Brigitte asked. Well, the fact that Destiny works in cleaning and is suddenly translating for a millionaire client, some are suggesting there might be some kind of irregularity. What kind of irregularity? Destiny asked, her indignation growing. They're suggesting you might be making up translations, or that you two could be working together on some kind of scheme. Brigitte stood up so fast her chair creaked. How dare they, she said, switching between English and German. This woman is my daughter, whom I found after 30 years. I understand the emotion of the moment, Richard said carefully, but we have protocols to follow. Protocols? Brigitte was visibly furious. I've been a client of this bank for 5 years. I have over $3 million invested here, and you're questioning my integrity. It's not your integrity that's being questioned, Richard said. It's the unusual nature of this coincidence. Coincidence? Destiny stood up as well. Mr. Richard, do you think I plan to spend 30 years of my life waiting for this coincidence? Of course not, but aber die glauben nicht, dass wir Mutter und Tochter sind, Brigitte asked Destiny in German. Sie denken wir lügen, Destiny replied, also in German. Richard watched their fluid exchange, beginning to realize the situation was more complex than he'd imagined. You two really do speak German fluently, he murmured. Ich bin in Deutschland geboren und aufgewachsen, Brigitte said. Destiny ist meine Tochter. And I grew up studying languages, dreaming of one day finding my family, Destiny added. German always drew me in the most, even though I didn't know why. Richard sighed, realizing his suspicions were unfounded. All right, I believe you, but we still have the system issue, and now it's 3:45. Brigitte looked out the window. The sun was already beginning to dip in the sky. We can't give up, she said. There has to be a way. That's when Destiny had an idea. What if we tried transferring through another system? Online banking, the app? I already tried that, Richard said. The entire banking system is down. It's like a widespread issue. Then let's go to another bank, Brigitte said. But you said it had to be here, Destiny reminded her. I said that for sentimental reasons, but if it's the only way to fulfill my mother's condition... Wait, Richard interrupted. There's still one possibility. Both women turned to him. The manager has access to an emergency system. It's only used in critical situations, but maybe... Where is he? Brigitte asked. In a meeting outside the bank, but I can try to reach him. Richard picked up his phone and dialed. As he spoke, Brigitte and Destiny continued talking. What's your daughter like, Zoe? Brigitte asked. She's an incredible girl, Destiny said, her eyes lighting up. Smart, curious, funny. She loves stories and drawing. Does she look like you? Everyone says so, but she has lighter eyes. Maybe they came from you, Brigitte smiled. I'd love to meet her. She'll adore meeting her grandmother. She always asked why she didn't have grandparents like the other kids. What did you tell her? That maybe one day she would. That not every family is the same. Richard hung up with a relieved expression. Good news. The manager is on his way. He should be here in 15 minutes. And you think he'll authorize the emergency system? Brigitte asked. Given the transaction amount and the fact that you're a valued client, I believe so. As they waited, Brigitte pulled more documents from her folder. Would you like to see more photos of your father? She asked Destiny. Of course. Brigitte spread several photographs across the table. Derek in different moments, at work, smiling at the camera, embracing Brigitte. He really was very handsome, Destiny said, touching one of the photos. And funny. He always knew how to make me laugh, even in the hardest times. Tell me a story about him. Brigitte thought for a moment. Once we were walking downtown when it started pouring. We didn't have an umbrella. Derek saw an elderly lady trying to shield herself from the rain at a bus stop and offered her his jacket. And what about you? We ran home soaked, Brigitte laughed, but Derek said it was worth it, that taking care of others was always more important than our own comfort. Sounds like he was a special person. He was. That's why I know he raised a special daughter too, even if he's not here physically. Destiny wiped away a tear that escaped. I always felt like something was missing in my life. Now I understand what it was. A family, said Brigitte. We both lost that for 30 years, but now we've found each other. Yes, and I don't intend to lose you again. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. At 4:15, the director arrived. William Harrison was a man in his early 50s, serious-looking but not intimidating. "Richard explained the situation to me," he said, greeting Brigitte and then Destiny. "It's truly extraordinary." "Thank you for coming, Mr. Harrison," said Brigitte. "I know this is an unusual situation." "Unusual would be an understatement," he replied with a smile. "But I'm willing to help. You have less than 2 hours. Can the emergency system process the transfer?" asked Richard. "It can, but I'll need some additional documents. Proof of identity, verification of the fund's origin." Brigitte quickly organized all the necessary documents while William reviewed them. "Everything seems to be in order," he said after a few minutes. "But there's a problem." Brigitte's heart raced. "What problem?" "For a transfer of this amount, I need approval from 2 directors, and I'm the only one available today." "What does that mean?" asked Destiny. "It means I technically can't authorize the transfer." The silence that followed was heavy. "But," William continued, "there's an exception." "What?" Brigitte and Destiny asked in unison. "If the transfer is to a registered charity, and if the client is physically present to confirm, I can use my emergency authorization." "Is Hope House Orphanage registered?" asked Brigitte. William typed a few commands on his laptop. "Yes, it's a registered and recognized institution." "Perfect. So we can proceed?" asked Richard. "We can, but I'll need Mrs. Schmidt to confirm verbally and in writing that this is her decision, free from coercion or outside pressure." "I fully confirm," Brigitte said without hesitation. William began preparing the documents while the sun continued its relentless descent in the sky. "How long will it take?" asked Destiny, glancing nervously out the window. "About 40 minutes to process everything," William replied. Brigitte checked the clock. 4:45. "It'll be tight," she murmured. As William worked, Brigitte and Destiny kept talking. "Can I ask about your life in Germany?" said Destiny. "Of course, what do you want to know?" "What was it like going back there after everything that happened here?" Brigitte took a deep breath. "It was awful. My family took me in, but they never let me forget what they called my mistakes. For years I couldn't get out of bed." "And your mother? How did she react when you returned?" "At first she said I'd done the right thing, that now I could rebuild my life properly." "Properly?" "Marry someone from our social standing, have legitimate children. Forget this rebellious phase of my life." "Did you try to do that?" "I did. For 5 years I tried to be the daughter they wanted. I went out with men they approved of, attended social events, smiled when they expected me to smile. But it didn't work. How could it? I had known real love. How could I settle for less?" "And your mother? When did she realize you weren't happy?" "It took many years. But gradually, she began to understand that I would never be the same person as before, that something inside me had broken when I returned." "Was that when she set this condition for the inheritance?" "No, that was recent. When the doctors said she had little time left, she called me and said she wanted to correct the mistakes of the past." "What mistakes?" "Forcing me to give you up, making me return to Germany, trying to erase Derek from my life." William looked up from the computer. "The transfer is almost ready. I just need a few more confirmations." "What kind of confirmations?" asked Brigitte. "Beneficiary institution details, bank account, legal representative." "I can help with that," said Destiny. "I know Hope House well. I still keep in touch." She picked up her phone and called the orphanage. "Hello, Mrs. Grace. It's Destiny." Yes, everything's fine. I need the bank details for a donation." "No, I can't explain right now, but it's urgent." While Destiny spoke on the phone, Brigitte watched her daughter's every move. There was something familiar in her gestures, in the way she smiled, in how she used her hands to emphasize her words. "Done," said Destiny, hanging up. "I have all the details." William quickly typed in the information. 5:15, announced Richard, checking his watch. "An hour until sunset," calculated Brigitte. "The transfer is processing," said William. "It should take about 15 more minutes." That's when Brigitte had a realization. "Destiny, you said you still keep in touch with the orphanage." "Yes, whenever I can, especially with the kids who don't have visitors." "Your father, Derek, did he visit there? According to Mrs. Grace, yes. A man would show up every month, leave money, and ask about one specific child. He never gave his name, but she always knew it was my father. Did he ask about you? He asked if I was okay, if I was studying, if I needed anything special. Brigitte began to cry again. He never forgot you. Even after I left, even knowing you'd been adopted. Actually, said Destiny hesitantly, I was never adopted. Brigitte stopped crying and looked straight at her. What do you mean? Several families were interested in me over the years, but something always went wrong at the last minute. Missing paperwork, families changing their minds, bureaucratic issues. You stayed at the orphanage until I was 18. Then I got a scholarship for college. Brigitte felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. You spent your whole childhood in an orphanage because I abandoned you. No, Destiny said firmly, holding her mother's hands. I had a happy childhood. Mrs. Grace and the other caregivers were wonderful. I had brothers and sisters of all ages. I learned to be independent, strong, resilient. But you could have had a family. I did have a family. Not a traditional one, but a real one. And now, she smiled, I have you. William cleared his throat. The transfer was processed successfully. The money is already in Hope House's account. Brigitte and Destiny hugged again. We did it, Brigitte whispered. Yes, we did, Destiny confirmed. 5:45, announced Richard. 30 minutes before sunset. What now? Asked Destiny. Brigitte looked at her daughter. Now I'd really like to meet my granddaughter, and then I'd like to know if you have any plans for the future. What kind of plans? Well, I have some businesses in Germany, and in the United States too. I've always needed someone I could trust to manage the American operations. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering a partnership, 50% of all my American businesses. Destiny was speechless. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say we'll talk more. We have 30 years to make up for. William stood up and extended his hand to both of them. It was a pleasure helping you, and congratulations on finding each other. Thank you for everything, said Brigitte. Thank you, Mr. William, added Destiny. When they left the room, all the bank employees were curious about the outcome. Some seemed embarrassed for having questioned the legitimacy of the situation. Karen, the employee who had suggested there might be irregularities, approached hesitantly. Destiny, I wanted to apologize. I shouldn't have doubted you. It's okay, Karen, Destiny replied graciously. I understand the situation seemed strange. Still, it was wrong of me. Brigitte observed the interaction and then addressed Karen. Can I ask you something? Why did you doubt Destiny specifically? Karen blushed. Well, she's from cleaning, and suddenly she was translating for an important client, and that seemed impossible to you? Not impossible, just unlikely. Why? Brigitte pressed. Karen looked around, noticing several colleagues were listening. Well, people like Destiny usually don't have that kind of education. People like Destiny? Brigitte's voice grew cold. I mean, you meant black people, Brigitte said calmly. The bank fell completely silent. Mrs. Brigitte, Richard began. No, let her answer. Do you think black people can't speak languages? Of course not, Karen said quickly. You just assumed Destiny couldn't have a higher education because she's black and works in cleaning. I didn't think of it that way. Well, you should have, Brigitte said. Destiny speaks 4 languages fluently. She has a college degree, and she's one of the smartest, most dignified people I've ever met. Mrs. Brigitte, Destiny interjected softly. It's okay. No, it's not okay, Brigitte replied. If it weren't for Destiny, I would have lost my inheritance. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have been able to speak to my mother one last time. You almost sabotaged that because of prejudice. William, who had overheard part of the conversation, stepped forward. If I may, I'd like to make an observation. Everyone turned to him. This bank has a merit-based promotion policy. Destiny, would you be interested in a position in our international department? Mr. William, Richard began. Richard, were you aware of Destiny's qualifications? Well, Did you know she speaks 4 languages? I didn't. Did you know she has a college degree? No. Then how could she have been promoted within the bank if her qualifications were never evaluated? Richard had no answer. Destiny, William continued, would you like to accept a position as International Client Coordinator? Destiny looked at Brigitte, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, I'd love to. Great. The salary is 3 times what you earn now, with full benefits and growth opportunities. Some people in the bank seemed uncomfortable, while others looked genuinely happy for Destiny. And now, Brigitte said, I'd very much like to meet my granddaughter. She's at the bank's daycare, Destiny said, smiling. Shall we go get her? As they walked toward the daycare, Brigitte asked, how will you explain to Zoe that she has a grandmother? I'll tell her the truth. That you were lost but now you're found. What if she doesn't like me? Impossible, Destiny said. You're exactly the kind of grandmother she's always dreamed of having. How so? Well, she always asked me what her grandmother would be like, and I always told her she'd be a strong, elegant woman who traveled the world and had many stories to tell. And now? Now I can say I was right. When they arrived at the daycare, they saw Zoe playing with building blocks. She was exactly as Destiny had described, a miniature version of her mother but with slightly lighter eyes. Zoe, called Destiny. The little girl looked up and ran toward her mother. Mommy, did you finish work early today? Actually, I have a surprise for you, said Destiny, kneeling to be at her daughter's level. What surprise? Do you want to meet your grandma? Zoe's eyes widened. My grandma? The grandma who was lost? Exactly that one. Zoe looked at Brigitte with curiosity. Are you my grandma? Yes, said Brigitte, also kneeling. Ich bin deine Oma. You speak the language of princesses, exclaimed Zoe. Das stimmt. Möchtest du Deutsch lernen? What did she say, Mommy? She asked if you want to learn German. I do, said Zoe, clapping her hands. Can you teach me to talk like a German princess? Brigitte laughed, tears of joy streaming down her face. I can teach you everything you want, my little princess. Zoe hesitated for a moment, then took a step toward Brigitte. Can I give you a hug, Grandma? Natürlich, mein Schatz, said Brigitte, opening her arms. Zoe threw herself into her grandmother's embrace, and Brigitte picked her up, spinning with her. You smell nice, said Zoe, like flowers. Thank you, sweetheart, and you're even prettier than I imagined. You imagined what I looked like? Every day for 5 years. Mommy said you were lost. Where were you? Brigitte looked at Destiny, who nodded encouragingly. I was very far from here in a country called Germany, but I never stopped thinking about you and your mommy. And now you found us. Yes, now I found you, and I'll never get lost again. Will you live with us? Brigitte looked at Destiny again. We'll talk about that, said Destiny. For now, how about we take Grandma home to see where we live? Yes, exclaimed Zoe. I can show Grandma my drawings. I'd love to see your drawings, said Brigitte. As they left the bank, Richard approached Destiny. Destiny, I want to apologize. I should have recognized your qualifications long ago. Thank you, Richard. Let's work together so this doesn't happen to other employees. I completely agree. Outside the bank, Brigitte paused for a moment and looked up, watching the sky turn orange with the approaching sunset. We did it, she said to Destiny. Your inheritance is safe. Our inheritance, corrected Destiny. Now we're a family. Yes, agreed Brigitte. And I intend to make up for every day of the last 30 years. We don't need to make up for anything, said Destiny. We just need to live the future. Zoe, who was playing with Brigitte's necklace, looked up. Grandma, can you tell me stories about Germany? I can tell you many stories, and maybe if your mommy agrees, we can visit Germany one day. Really? Zoe's eyes sparkled. Really? You have a great-grandmother there who's very eager to meet you. A great-grandmother? Zoe looked at Destiny. How many grandmas do I have now? 2, answered Destiny, laughing. 1 here and 1 in Germany. That's so much better than having none. As they walked home, Brigitte told stories about Germany, Destiny translated the harder parts, and Zoe asked 1,000 questions about castles, princesses, and languages. When they reached the small apartment where Destiny and Zoe lived, Brigitte looked around with interest. "It's cozy," she said sincerely. "It's small," said Destiny, "but it's ours." "Size doesn't matter when it's filled with love," said Zoe in English, surprising Brigitte. "She speaks English too?" "A few phrases. I teach her what I can." "Mommy, can I show Grandma my drawings now?" "Of course, sweetheart." Zoe ran to her room and came back with a stack of drawings. "This one is you, Mommy," she said, showing a drawing of a smiling woman. "And this is my daddy, who's in heaven." Brigitte looked at the drawing of Zoe's father, and then at Destiny. "How did you explain about her father?" "I told her she had a daddy who loved her very much, but he went to heaven before she was born." "And this one," Zoe continued, showing another drawing, "was supposed to be my grandma, but I didn't know how to draw you, so I just drew a heart." Brigitte looked at the heart drawing and felt the tears returning. "It's perfect," she said, "exactly how I feel inside." "Now I can draw you for real," Zoe said excitedly. "I'd love that." While Zoe drew, Brigitte and Destiny talked in the kitchen. "How did you manage to raise such a special child all by yourself?" Brigitte asked. "It wasn't easy," Destiny admitted. "There were times I thought I couldn't do it, especially when she was a baby and I was still in school. You studied while taking care of her. I finished college when she was 2. I studied at night after she fell asleep. Sometimes I took her to class when I had no one to watch her." "And her father?" "I met him in college. He was a good man, but he wasn't ready to be a father. When he found out I was pregnant, he disappeared." "That must have been so hard." "It was. But looking at Zoe now, I don't regret a thing. She's the best gift I've ever received." "And now you have a new opportunity at the bank." "Yes. And you? What will you do now that you've fulfilled your mother's condition?" "First, I want to spend time with you both. Then I need to go back to Germany to see my mother. And then, I'd really love for you both to come with me." "Forever?" "Not necessarily, but so she can meet her granddaughter and great-granddaughter, so we can be a real family, even if just for a while." Zoe came running from the living room with a drawing in her hands. "I'm done," she announced. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands, a shorter woman with curly hair, a taller woman with straight hair, and a little girl between them. Above them, a bright sun, and beside them a man smiling from a cloud. "This is us," Zoe explained. "You, me, and Mommy, and this is my daddy in heaven, smiling because now we're a complete family." Brigitte could barely speak from emotion. "It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen," she finally said. "Can I make another one for you to take to Germany?" "I'd love that." "And can I make one for great-grandma too?" She'd be so touched. That night, after Zoe went to sleep, Brigitte and Destiny stayed up talking. "Can I ask you a personal question?" Destiny said. "Anything." "Did you remarry in Germany?" "No, I never could. How could I marry without love when I'd already known true love?" "Were you happy there?" "Financially stable, but never happy. There was always something missing." "And now?" "Now I feel like I can be happy again. Having a daughter, a granddaughter. It's more than I ever dared to dream." "What about your businesses? How do they work?" "I have investments in different areas: real estate, technology, tourism. In the United States, I always had to hire third parties to manage everything. But now you have family." "Exactly. Someone I can trust completely. But I don't know anything about business." "You can learn, and you have something money can't buy: integrity and intelligence." The next morning, Brigitte woke up on the living room couch. It was the first time in 30 years she'd slept so well. Zoe appeared first, still in her pajamas, carrying a stuffed bear. "Good morning, Grandma," she said in German. "Guten Morgen, mein Schatz," Brigitte replied. "You remembered. Mommy taught me some words last night before bed." Destiny appeared next, already dressed for work. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "Wonderfully. It's been years since I've felt so at home." "You are home," Zoe said matter-of-factly. "This is your home now, too." Zoe's right, agreed Destiny. You can stay as long as you want. Actually, said Brigitte, I need to make a call to Germany to my mother. Of course, would you like some privacy? No, I'd like you both to listen. After all, you're part of the conversation now. Brigitte picked up her phone and dialed. After a few rings, a faint voice answered, Hallo Mutter, ich bin's Brigitte. Brigitte? Mein Kind, wie ist es gelaufen? Es hat funktioniert, Mutter. Ich habe sie gefunden. Wer ist sie? Meine Tochter und meine Enkelin. There was silence on the other end, then the sound of crying. Brigitte, ich bin so froh, bring sie zu mir. Das werde ich, Mutter, wir kommen alle. When Brigitte hung up, both Destiny and Zoe were looking at her curiously. What did you talk about? Asked Destiny. I told her I found you. She said she's happy and wants all of us to visit her. Even me? Asked Zoe. Especially you. She said she wants to meet her great-granddaughter before... Brigitte stopped, realizing she shouldn't worry Zoe with details about her great-grandmother's illness. Before what? Asked Zoe. Before she gets too old to play, Destiny said quickly. Oh, so can we go soon? Brigitte looked at Destiny. It depends on many things. Passports, visas. Actually, said Brigitte, I can make that easier. I have... connections. What kind of connections? Let's just say when you've been in international business for decades, you know people who can speed things up. Destiny looked worried. Is this legal? Completely legal. Just faster than usual. And my new job at the bank? Richard said you can start when you get back from the trip. He understands the situation. So, we can really go? Asked Zoe excitedly. If your mommy wants to, replied Brigitte. Destiny thought for a moment. Is it a good idea to take Zoe to meet someone who's sick? My mother specifically asked to meet her, and doctors say family visits can help. Help how? Give her reasons to keep fighting. Destiny nodded slowly. Then let's go. When? How about next week? I can arrange everything by then. A week? Zoe jumped for joy. Am I going to fly on a plane? Yes, you're going to fly on a plane, said Brigitte, laughing. To a castle. Not exactly a castle, but a very big old house. With towers. With towers, too. Zoe ran to her room to start packing her drawings for the trip. Are you sure about this? Asked Destiny when they were alone. Destiny, I spent 30 years away from you. I don't want to waste another day. But what if your mother said if she doesn't like me? She'll adore you. How could she not? Well, 30 years ago she didn't want you to marry my father. 30 years ago she was a different person. The illness made her reflect on many things, about the mistakes she made. What if Zoe says something inappropriate? She's just a child. My mother raised 5 children. She knows how kids are, and Zoe is very well-mannered. Still, Destiny, Brigitte held her daughter's hands. Trust me, everything will be fine. A week later, they were at the airport. Zoe was buzzing with excitement, wearing a new backpack Brigitte had bought her, filled with drawings and gifts for her great-grandmother. Have you ever flown on a plane before, Mommy? Asked Zoe. No, never, admitted Destiny. Me neither. We'll find out together what it's like. Brigitte watched them both with tenderness. What a difference a week could make in a person's life. During the flight, Zoe slept leaning against Brigitte while Destiny looked out the window watching the clouds. Are you nervous? Asked Brigitte. A little. It's a lot all at once. I understand. I'm nervous too. You? Why? Because my mother still doesn't know details about you, about how you grew up, about your life. What if she says something that hurts you? Brigitte, I grew up in an orphanage. I've heard much worse things than anything your mother could say. Even so, I don't want anything to ruin this moment. Nothing will ruin it. We're a family now, no matter what anyone else thinks. When they arrived in Germany, a driver was waiting for them. On the way to Brigitte's grandmother's house, Zoe gazed out the window in wonder. Everything looks like a fairy tale book, she said. Because it really is, replied Brigitte. Germany inspired many fairy tales. Like Snow White? Exactly like Snow White. Brigitte's family home was truly impressive. A 3-story mansion with vast gardens and, yes, a tower. "It's a castle," Zoe exclaimed. "You said it wasn't a castle." "Technically, it's not," said Brigitte, laughing. "But I admit it looks like one." A nurse greeted them at the door. "Your mother is waiting in her room," she told Brigitte. "She's having a good day today." "What does a good day mean?" whispered Destiny. "That she's awake, lucid and pain-free," explained Brigitte. They climbed the marble stairs to the second floor. Brigitte paused in front of a dark wooden door. "Ready?" she asked. Destiny and Zoe nodded. Brigitte knocked lightly and opened the door. "Mutter, wir sind da." A faint voice answered from inside the room. "Kommt herein, meine Lieben." The room was large and bright, with enormous windows overlooking the gardens. In the bed, an elderly woman, very thin but with eyes still bright, smiled at them. "Hello, Oma," Zoe said in German, stepping forward shyly. The woman froze for a moment, looking at Zoe, then at Destiny, then at Brigitte. "Mein Gott," she whispered. "Sie sieht genauso aus wie du als Kind, Brigitte." "What did she say?" asked Zoe. "She said you looked just like me when I was a child," translated Brigitte. "Really?" Zoe looked at Brigitte. "You were just like me." "Very much so," Brigitte confirmed. The grandmother stretched out her frail arms to Zoe. "Komm zu mir, mein kleiner Schatz." Zoe glanced at Destiny, who nodded. She approached the bed and let her great-grandmother embrace her. "Sie riecht gut," Zoe said in German. The grandmother laughed, a weak but genuine laugh. "Du sprichst sehr gut Deutsch für ein so kleines Mädchen." "Mommy taught me," Zoe said proudly. The grandmother then looked at Destiny, who remained slightly apart. "Und du bist meine Enkelin," she said, reaching a hand toward Destiny. Destiny hesitated but stepped forward and took the grandmother's hand. "Es tut mir so leid," the grandmother said, tears streaming down her face. "So sehr leid." "What is she saying?" asked Destiny. "She's apologizing," translated Brigitte. "She's saying she's so sorry." "Why?" Brigitte spoke quickly with her mother in German, then turned to Destiny. "For forcing your separation, for depriving you of a family, for all the lost years." Destiny felt tears welling in her eyes. "Tell her it's okay, that I found a wonderful family at the orphanage, that I was happy." Brigitte translated, and the grandmother smiled through her tears. "Sie sagt, du bist eine sehr gütige Frau," the grandmother told Brigitte. "She said you're a very kind woman," Brigitte translated. "And Zoe?" asked the great-grandmother. "Erzähl mir von Zoe." Brigitte and Destiny spent the next 2 hours telling her about Zoe, her personality, her drawings, her intelligence, her dreams. Zoe, in turn, showed all the drawings she had brought and performed a little show of German words she had learned. "I also have a gift for you," said the grandmother to Zoe, pointing to an old dresser. Brigitte opened the drawer and took out an antique jewelry box. "It was mine when I was your age," the grandmother explained through Brigitte, "and it belonged to my mother before that. Now it's yours." Zoe opened the box and found a delicate necklace with a small heart. "It's beautiful," she exclaimed. "Can I wear it now?" "Of course," said the grandmother, smiling. As Brigitte helped Zoe put on the necklace, the grandmother called Destiny closer. "Ich möchte dir etwas sagen," she said. "What does she want to tell me?" asked Destiny. The grandmother spoke for a few minutes in German, occasionally pointing to documents on a nearby table. Brigitte looked visibly surprised by what she heard. "What is it?" asked Destiny. She wants to give half of her inheritance to you," said Brigitte, still processing the information. "What?" Destiny was shocked. "But she barely knows me. She said you're her granddaughter, and granddaughters deserve an inheritance. She said this is her way of making up for all the lost years. But I can't accept this." The grandmother said something else in German, with surprising strength for someone so frail. "She said it's not a request," translated Brigitte. "It's an order. She insists." "But, Destiny," Brigitte gently interrupted, "you have to understand. For my mother, this is about redemption. Let her do this." Zoe, who had overheard part of the conversation, approached her great-grandmother. "Thank you, great-grandma," she said in German. "Du bist sehr nett." The grandmother smiled and stroked Zoe's face. Du bist mein kleiner Engel, she said. They spent 3 days in Germany. Each day, the grandmother seemed a little weaker, but also more at peace. On the last day, she called Brigitte for a private conversation. Was ist es, Mutter? Ich werde nicht mehr lange hier sein, said the grandmother, aber ich bin glücklich. Du hast deine Familie gefunden. Mutter, nein, lass mich sprechen. Ich habe einen großen Fehler gemacht vor 30 Jahren, aber jetzt kann ich in Frieden gehen. Du wirst nicht gehen, du wirst gesund werden. The grandmother shook her head with a sad smile. Wir beide wissen, dass das nicht wahr ist. Aber es ist okay, ich habe meine Enkelin und Urenkelin kennengelernt. Ich konnte Wiedergutmachung leisten. Brigitte hält Herr Mothers Hand. Ich liebe dich, Mutter. Ich liebe dich auch, mein Kind. Und jetzt kümmere dich gut um deine Familie. That night, Destiny found Brigitte crying in the garden. She's very sick, isn't she? Asked Destiny. Yes. The doctors said it's a matter of weeks, maybe days. I'm so sorry. At least she can go in peace now, knowing our family is reunited. And now, what are we going to do? Now, said Brigitte, wiping her tears, we're going to live. We're going to be a real family. We're going to cherish every moment. What about the business, the inheritance? We'll learn together. You, me, and Zoe. We'll build something beautiful. End of story. Tell us what you thought of this story. Do you believe Destiny made the right choice by accepting the inheritance? Leave your comment and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.